Okay. All right. Call this meeting to order. And the first order of business is always to adopt the agenda. Could I get a motion to adopt the agenda, Council? Councillor Singh.
Make the motion to adopt the agenda.
Okay. Any questions, conversation, deletions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. And then we have no consent agenda this evening, and we need to do the minutes from last meeting. Councillor McDonald.
I motion to adopt the meetings from April 20th.
Okay, all in favor of the minutes? Carried. No public hearings tonight, and we go straight into delegations. Nathan Clausen, please come join us on behalf of Innovate Cochrane. Take it away.
All right, good evening. Mr. Nagel, Mayor Nagel and councillors, you are very efficient. I did not expect to be standing here this early in the meeting.
Efficiency's good.
It is. I love efficiency. So let's jump in here. All right, Innovate Cochrane, we were standing here back in September and had a chance to share briefly about our journey at that time. We're going to spend 9 minutes and 34 seconds and discuss some updates since then, and then engage some question and answer from you as well. All right, for those of you who may be new to Innovate Cochrane, our mission, as we submitted in our very first legal filing to become an entity, Innovate Cochrane exists to raise the quality of life in Cochrane through supporting the success of innovators, entrepreneurs, and leaders in the community. Another way that we've worded that lately is how and where do we need to innovate as a community? There are parts of our community that are thriving and doing well, and there are aspects of our community that could use a fresh look or a fresh approach or fresh connections or collaborations. And I think those are areas where, as an organization, we thrive. And we do that through a number of our events. Community Innovator Spotlight, it's a series we do at the bookstore downtown every month. Our June upcoming Spotlight Series event is actually culinary innovation. So any entity in our community that deals with food or culinary pursuits, we're going to bring them all in a room, and we're just going to invite a conversation and spark an opportunity for greater connections and greater ideas to help those in that type of space, as one example, thrive, but thrive together in a more connected ecosystem. That's one catalyst way that we do that. We have a Founders Coffee event twice a month in the mornings to support founders as they're trying to get themselves up and running and successful. We have another entity called Startup Cochrane, another event that we do on a monthly basis. CIE stands for Community Innovation Ecosystem. That is our program targeting existing mature businesses and organizations, nonprofits, et cetera, that are looking to really grow and thrive, and we provide the fuel in their tank to do that, and we do it in a cohort-based program, which means we put you in a room with 9 or 10 other organizations that are trying to do the same thing, and we practice sharing each other's stories and offering insight to each other. So that's been quite a powerful program. We're starting our 4th cohort in the fall. Innovate Cochrane, we put ourselves in our own cohort. So we are actually in cohort 3 ourselves because as an organization, we need that exact same growth and input. So we are drinking our own yellow and blue Kool-Aid, you could say. All right, and then nothing happens without strategic partnerships, which is partly why the reason we're here today is to discuss our relationship with economic development at the town and others. And some of the others are the Cochrane Community Innovation Team, or CCIT. This is an ecosystem of a great number and a number of great organizations in our community. They're here on the screen. Economic development is also part of this story. This is a very intentional collaboration now between all of these entities to understand who we are, who each other are, what our complementary value is to each other, so that we are not duplicating efforts, but we are also boosting and showcasing each other and aligning ourselves for the maximum impact from the resources that each of us procure and then deliver to the community in different ways. I'm very proud of this. This was, I think, partly Innovate Cochrane and others as catalysts to get this happening. And I'm very excited about the future of this group of entities as well. As far as funding goes for Innovate Cochrane, we are about 3 years into our legal entity story, and we've been able to garner funding from a number of different levels of governments, which we're excited about and thankful for. Obviously, to the bottom left, you'll see the town itself, which is the $25,000 that I'll speak to at the end of our presentation. The most significant, I would say, though, as an anchor to the work that we're doing now, for example, with our CIE program, is the Prairies Economic Development Prairie Scan funding, just under $1 million from 23 to 27. This is the work that we are doing in direct partnership with the engine room in helping fund the incubator and the Smart Start program that's there, as well as our CIE program on our side. To the tune of 49% back on every dollar that we are able to procure and then spend in the benefit of these programs. That's been a fantastic footing for all of those entities to really get our footing and test what is our unique value and how do we then position ourselves for the future, which I know is an active conversation on the town side and is also an active conversation on our side. How do we make these ventures as impactful as they are and sustainable in our community story within Cochrane? Together between Innovate Cochrane and the engine room, between those multiple programs that I just mentioned, we are partway through our funding chapter, a 3-year chapter, and we've made significant progress on the number of small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs, that we've assisted, revenue growth, number of qualified and trained personnel in those companies. We have a number of companies, and I think, yeah, so those are the numbers. And these are the stories of the people and businesses and organizations that we've impacted over the last 2 years. And each one of these, you'll see there's construction companies, metalworks, art galleries, cleaning companies, pharmacies. Everybody who ends up in the room together ends up in a very diverse company. We have drone companies. We have a wolf dog sanctuary. The only one in Canada was in our cohort. When you bring those organizational challenges and put them on the table together and model what it means to be vulnerable and accept input and insight, you realize both that you are very similar to organizations that have nothing to do with what you do, and you also receive very innovative and almost perpendicular insights to your special, unique challenges through their lens, so innovation for me, that's what it looks like with Skin On, is that type of opportunity to bring those types of very diverse and yet common human story experiences together. It's absolutely magic. Even for those who don't believe in magic, that's what magic looks like too, in a daily activity. It's been fantastic for us. So in retrospect, we did receive $25,000 last year from the town from economic development, and we used that in a number of ways, both as our contribution in part to the Small Business Week, which was a fantastic event last year for those who were able to attend. We continued in our CIE program, the Community Innovation Ecosystem Program, to really test digitizing portions of it. How do you innovate in a systematic way through idea capture, through infusing your organization with that type of technical training? We bolstered that. Strategic partnerships, so that CCIT group with all the logos you saw before, we now have a memorandum of understanding that's been signed between all of those parties. So really entrenching our future together of delivery to the community. And then as far as operations, for ourselves, we actually delivered a marketing strategy this year, which really is helping us hone in on what's our value, what's our unique value proposition, adjacent to all of our partners, so that all of us can get even more focused. We do some promotion now, which we weren't as good at before. We're getting better at that. And also governance. How do we we're 3 years in as an organization, how do we make sure that our governance footing allows us to pour more resource in and pour more resource out? Governance is one way we have to do that. And so we are shoring up our board governance, our operational governance as well. Going forward, so we want to take our Community Innovation Ecosystem Program. We validated that it has impact. We're now reaching out and testing, can we make Cochrane a hub for that type of program? And so we're opening up seats in our cohort 4 in the fall to a certain number of businesses or entities that might come to us from Bragg Creek or Rocky View or Airdrie to test this type of product or program, either in a hub context, which we are going to do in the fall, and then to see if maybe this begins to live maybe in their communities, and then we can become a model for what they might want to do in their community as well for small and medium-sized businesses, which in part is the engine of a community of our size. This program is directly targeting that profile, you could say, and we want to test now being a hub in Cochrane, which has been our vision all along, and now we can actually put some legs to that. Fund development, we want to be sustainable, and we want to innovate on how we generate sustainable revenue and income. We appreciate obviously the contributions like these, but we also want to test how a nonprofit can be sustainable and not only rely on kind of grant funding. We want to provide that sure foundation so we can plan and build sustainable programming on that. Activating and refining our unique contribution, I think helps model for each organization that we do business with, how they can also refine their story. So that's a ripple effect that we want to be a catalyst for. And then we want to help continue to refine, I would say, our last point here, what does Innovate Cochrane want to be in the community? Do we want to be known as a community catalyst for like complicated or complex issues, be a lightning rod for that, draw people together? We're testing our value there. We have that direct programming for small and medium-sized businesses, which we've seen valuable. Or do we want to be known for great events, which we also want to be known for? So we're kind of finding our identity still by testing in live. What are the things that we bring value and unique value to? So we're busy that way. And, you can see that too. I'm just going to do that. 10 minutes. I think I actually just about got there this time. So
You can keep going if there's a few more slides.
Oh, actually, you know what? Thank you.
There you go.
There it is.
Efficient.
All right. So I'll pause there. Thanks, everyone, for entertaining our presentation here this afternoon.
Okay, excellent. Council, can I get a motion to start the conversation? Councillor McDonald.
I'll make the motion to accept Nathan's report as information. I think that's the motion for tonight.
Yep.
I have a couple questions, Nathan. Your grants so far are really, really impressive. And I know the CIE cohorts do have a fee-for-service model as a part of that. Mm-hmm. But can you tease us at all what some of your talks have looked like for how does Innovate Cochrane approach sustainability in terms of future fund development and revenue? It's always my favorite topic with nonprofits, as you know. So I was just curious if you guys have any great brainstorming going on about that.
I'm really curious, and maybe also akin to the programming at the incubator, for example, or that type of thing. I'm really curious as a community of our size, how do we understand, for example, like Garmin? They're a very large presence in our community. They've got a very specific business model that's working very well for them globally and locally. How do we as an organization, for example, like Innovate Cochrane, how do we understand their value proposition? How do they want to show up in the community? How do they want to bring good to the community, which I know they do, and others large businesses in our community do? How do we engage enterprises like that want to find a way to give back to the community, and we could be a vehicle for delivering their value and help checking their boxes, but then also funneling some of the resource that an entity like them might have, but doing that in an aligned way. Like, we're not going to open a store like CSHO, they have that. That's awesome. There's other enterprises. I really love the idea of social enterprise, social business, that kind of business model. We're trying to figure out what does that look like for Innovate Cochrane. Mm-hmm. And so so similar to what I said about the CIE program, where you'll bring different types of businesses into a room and you just see synapses firing that weren't firing before. I love going in, I buy lots of things from Home Reno Heaven, and I go in there and I think, what's our version of this? Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure what it is yet, but I like just challenging ourselves from different perspectives that way. So we don't actually have the answer to that question yet, Councillor McDonald, but we're still leaning into that.
But you're asking the question, which is really, really important for any nonprofit's future.
Yep.
Are you seeing, I know you guys have equivalents in other communities. Are there any interesting ideas that are taking shape, like with Okatech or Calgary Innovation Coalition? Is there any kind of interesting revenue models starting to emerge that you've noticed?
I think more and more. So I've been quite connected to Platform Calgary in past years, which is largely focused on obviously startups and primarily tech startups, and it's evolving over the years too, but with our program really targeting small and medium-sized businesses, the effort that it takes to get a business from zero, where it doesn't exist, to something that's actually successful, that's a lot of jet fuel. But if you take a business like 2 Pharmacy or a business that's already successful and you help them incrementally grow, that's a different game to play. And that's where we want to play, because that's an often neglected or overlooked, or maybe not as looked at slice of our business demographics, for example. We want to live there, and I think that's where we're finding some of our solid value. We're not seeing a lot of that maybe same type of programming as a primary focus in other organizations. So like the Smart Start program, which we have in our community, lives in Airdrie, lives elsewhere. I think taking a business who now has gotten on their feet, and now what's that mentored, sustained, maybe peer mentored chapter that they're into next? How can we maybe test what we're doing here in other communities to see if it lands the same way? So we're in contact right now with Airdrie, economic development there, with Okotoks, and talking about what does a cohort look like where we as communities can collaborate and validate in the real world what these kind of investments can look like and do. We're seeing what it does in our community, but we love that we're Cochrane and we're unique, but in some ways we're not unique. Every community has very similar businesses and opportunities, I would say.
And I just want anyone listening to know that I was lucky enough to be in cohort 1 of the innovation ecosystem when I was with Helping Hands, and it was really like a fork in the road moment that I can look back on. And I would encourage anyone who's pondering applying to the next cohort to definitely do it. One more question before I let you go. In the prep materials, I read about your advancement committee in terms of your governance changes,
Yes.
and then also about taking your expertise in innovation and entrepreneurship and intersecting that with community issues like housing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we had applied for a CIP grant and under the auspice of a social innovation lab. So taking what we do, action-oriented, but tackling some more on that piece about testing. Can we be a community catalyst? We have professional capacities with the number of us on the board to facilitate those types of things. So could we take a complex issue or a topic like housing, which is complex, it has all kinds of facets and sides, it has a lot of voices in the community already that bring their unique puzzle pieces. Could we act as a catalyst to help bring puzzle pieces to the table and help refine an execution strategy on that complements what's already being done or will be done? And I even noticed on tonight's agenda, there's obviously the housing needs assessment. All of those are data points, but how do we translate all of those sound bites to something that meaningfully writes another chapter of that housing story for us? That's Cochrane's chapter. We are very curious about how do we test that. And so the funding that we applied for was kind of a catalyst to step in and say, we're going to do this. And then the funding didn't come through, but we're still going to do this. We're going to find a way to experiment with that type of programming that likely starts with coffee and people at a table, which is how we start. And then the magic starts to happen, and then people start to align. And again, we're not unique as an organization. Lots of amazing organizations in our community are doing that, including the social arm of this organization. But I think there might be a unique value proposition for us to bring a really refined professional catalyst function. And we are curious to test that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I've watched what happens when you bring a bunch of diverse voices into a room and talk about something. So I'm really glad you're going to continue it even without the CIP. And I'm excited to hear how that progresses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a question. I'm wondering, is there anything in particular that council can do to help support our local startup community? One of the things our council really wants to do is speed up the way we're supporting businesses in Cochrane, and so we want to see more businesses open and thrive in our local economy. And we're really trying to find at this point, what sort of policies can we implement or actions can we take to support that work? I think there's very open mind up here around the bench about that. So do you have any recommendations or ideas?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is wait for the presentation from economic development as they get their multi-year strategic plan, ratified and validated, and obviously that flows through you shortly. I think based on our input into that journey with them and the team that's been building and evolving over the last 2 years under Mark and Nicole and the team, I think that already will be a very solid kind of compass element to guide because a lot of it was based on community engagement. And so that's already an ROI waiting, I think, to be formally ratified. And so I'm also looking forward to hearing and seeing what the final version of that is, because we also want to be part of that story. And I think beyond that, like community engagement is challenging. I mean, I say that on this side. I'm sure you live that every day on your side. So I think for us, when I think about what are the needs for innovation in our community, one of them is community engagement. How do we come at community engagement in fresh ways, or intentionally test ways to engage? Like there's a small business community, like the Chamber obviously has their pool, and a lot of us were at the trade show on the weekend, and you see a lot of those small businesses they're there, they've invested their $200 or however much it was to be at the booth. I think it's looking for and experimenting and testing ways of listening to what are those needs, and then like synthesizing those into a way that you can actually then act on that and put investment, whether that's financial or otherwise. So, but I would start with the ECDEV, output that's going to be coming shortly and finalized. I think that adjacent to some of the work that we're doing and others, like that CCIT logo soup there, all of those organizations collectively, we're doing some of that same thing. We're listening for, well, what's Cochrane tourism like? Or Explore Cochrane. What are they hearing? What are we hearing? What's Community Futures? What are they hearing? I think it's putting people in the room together and getting more ROI for an hour that they spent in the community. All 6 of us get the value from that 1 hour because we're all with each other every 2 or 3 months. So it's just getting more efficient use of all of those hours that are going into the community and bringing those collectively together.
Okay.
I would start there.
Thanks.
Yep.
Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, thank you very much, Nathan. Great to see you, and through you, congratulations to Innovate Cochrane. I can't believe it's only been 3 years. It seems like you guys have been movers and shakers on this front for far longer than that. What I would ask you to speak to is, and just use this as an opportunity to kind of help people understand what Innovate Cochrane is. I think often people think it's just about innovating for business success, and I know your organization leans into a much broader interpretation of what innovating for the community means, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of space to expand on that.
Thank you, Councillor McFadden. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think like I professionally, I come out of a corporate innovation, so strongly business and organizational innovation, kind of in those frameworks and models that I've been certified in and I train out on my day job. When I think about innovation from a community lens, for me it really starts in the community word, which is how do we do community in new ways that actually raises the quality of life for anybody who either lives here, works here, shows up here. Like we want to raise that, and that's a pretty qualitative statement. How do you measure that? We want to. Like we actually want to get into the data, and we bring data into our community innovation ecosystem program, like innovation maturity. We want to measure that because we want to show that we're actually making an impactful difference. But it's not just corporate, it's not just business. It is that, because if they succeed, then that money and those resources spill out into the community. Like that's where, when our baseball team needs t-shirts or sponsorships that the kids do, that money comes from our businesses. So there's an ecosystem that flows circularly. I think, yeah, we are about business and like economic and socioeconomic for us. All of that has to be part of the math because all of us wear 8 or 10 hats in the community. None of us is only a business owner. I'm a father, I'm a volunteer with an organization. I work in Calgary, but thankfully, because of COVID, I get to work from home now for a couple of days a week, so I'm in my community. So we have to, I think, address all of those layers, but do it in measurable ways. I think as a nonprofit organization, I want us to be known as a professional organization that uses data, which is available if we look for it. There's some discipline, but we can measure the things that need to get improved in our community, and not just financial KPIs on a financial statement. You need that, but there's ways to measure other things in our community too, and I think we should.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to give you up there to highlight that a lot of what people, I think, understand you to be is just helping businesses to innovate and new businesses to come into creation. Whereas a lot of the work I've seen you folks successfully deliver on is that whole ecosystem, I know you like to call it, from your speaker series to just how that community building is just intrinsic to the work you do. So I just wanted to give you a chance to celebrate that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Singh?
Thank you, Nathan. I have 2 questions. Like, how's the Innovate Cochrane currently engaging youth? And are there plans to expand youth-focused programming or pathways into entrepreneurship?
Great question. I love that question. We'll ask two questions, I guess. So we don't actually do much with youth right now. In our first 2 to 3 years, not directly, I would say. I mean, our very first, so those of you who've been to that monthly Community Innovator Spotlight Series, the very first time we made a bet on one of those, we did a pilot, just kind of like throwing spaghetti at a wall to say, like, is there meaningful, opportunity for this type of story? I invited Reed Kimmett to be part of a grand experiment, and we went to the bookstore, and so we pulled the high school, the Cochrane High, videography department in because we needed somebody to record it, and that was my daughter was part of that crew, so her teacher, was willing to have them come. So we've had youth in our events, but we've not actually focused on youth directly per se. We've supported, say, some of the work that Yale and others do in the high schools that is entrepreneurial related, but that's us maybe serving alongside others. Sometimes we act as a catalyst when a high school group or an outside party comes and says, hey, we want to do work with the youth in our community. We connect them. So in some ways, I guess that's our offering so far, is really acting as that catalyst. We know who's in the community, and when somebody wants to bring and do good in our community, we can connect them. That part is true, for sure. In our own kind of Innovate Cochrane-centric programming, I would love for us to be more actively engaged in that, and that is part of our, say, 3 to 5 year plan, is how do we become more formally engaged on that topic directly.
Okay. Thank you, yeah. But do you see could the strong partnership with the schools or post-secondary institution help align innovation programming and with the job opportunities, or?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and even in that CCIT narrative, there's already conversations. I mean, lots of the other entities in our community, in that Cochrane Community Innovation Team, or CCIT. Actually, I might just bring that, because I'm going to refer back to that. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to go back to our logos. There are a number of these entities that are already doing very intentional work with youth and young entrepreneur programs. And so, again, we want to be mindful that we're not duplicating what they're already doing. We want to amplify what they're doing. So we will play that function for sure. But it is part of our board-facing kind of conversations of how do we bring value to that demographic. I've got 3 teenage daughters. Some that one just graduated high school, and that age is a challenging age, to find meaningful employment, to continue your trajectory on your professional growth path. So that's on my mind a lot, personally. But it's a demographic that I have a lot of empathy for, because you're in that transitionary stage of life, and how do you get the guidance you need? And we have a startup incubator. We have some pretty young individuals actually in the engine room at the incubator. I'm pretty excited about that, because we know each other through our ecosystem, and we find out what their story is. They come to Founders Coffee with us, and we connect them to other people that we know can be a support to them as well.
Just to add on to that, I believe the Community Future West is the Lemonade Day, they are doing something, so it's great to see.
That's
the
right.
young.
Exactly right. Yep. Yeah. Lemonade. We're gonna help them sell lemonade and help on young entrepreneurs learn the ropes of what does it mean to run a business. Yeah, I love that. I love that opportunity that's coming to fruition in our community. Yep. And that they're going to get business licenses of some sort.
That's right.
We have to learn all the cogs. We need all those pieces to come together. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for all the work your organization does, and thanks for being here this evening. I want to leave an open invitation to you. If there's anything else we can do to support you, or you want to meet with us again for coffee or whatever, please just look us up. You know where to find us. Very good. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. Oh, wait, we need a motion, actually. Council, can I get a vote? Well, no, we have a motion. We need to vote on the motion. Can I get all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now you can go. Next up, into the business portion of our agenda, item 7A, temporary outdoor patios. We did have Mr. Krasinski on the agenda, but I believe Mr. O'Clair is going to be doing the presentation tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. I'm here this evening to present administration's update and path forward for the temporary outdoor patio program. On April 7th, 2026, Council directed administration to explore the reintroduction of a seasonal patio expansion program similar to previous years, with appropriate restrictions to maintain safe pedestrian passage, and with consideration for streamlined approvals and clear operational guidelines, and report back to Council with options for a time-limited pilot for the 2026 season. So just a little bit of background. In 2021, the town of Cochrane implemented a temporary outdoor patio program as a pilot to support local businesses with their operations under public health restrictions during the COVID-19 pandemic. This pilot program permitted the creation of outdoor patios in public and private spaces from the months of April to September. Since 2021, the temporary outdoor patio program has continued to operate under Planning Services Department, and businesses have been able to continue applying for patios on a seasonal basis. So the current process, the intent of this temporary outdoor patio program is to provide an expedited application and approval process without the need for businesses to go through a development permit process. There is no fee for the application. The business is required to submit an application to Planning Services consisting of an application form, drawings that are in accordance with the temporary outdoor patio guidelines, and a signed temporary outdoor patio agreement. Additionally, proof of insurance is required if the proposed patio is located on public property. The application is then circulated to the Fire and Roads Department for 2 days, and then they are to provide comments. The application is reviewed by Planning Services, and comments which may need to be addressed are provided to the businesses for their response. When the review is complete, all outstanding comments are addressed. A permit is provided and addressed. A permit is then provided to the businesses, which allows them to begin construction on the patio. Prior to occupancy, the business is required to contact Fire Services to schedule an inspection. The program has consistently provided timely approvals with an average turnaround time from application to the permit approval from around 7 days. So the table on this screen shows the number of patios which have been approved since the inception of the pilot program in 2021. As you can see, the number of applications has declined in recent years. It is worth noting that several businesses would reapply for temporary patios on a yearly basis, and that is reflected in these numbers. Additionally, several businesses pursued development permit applications for permanent patios, following the seasonal patios which were enabled through this program. On this map, you can see the locations of all the temporary patios which have been previously approved since 2021. The majority of these temporary patio applications have been located in the downtown area. 2 businesses pursued development permit applications for permanent patios following seasonal patios, which were enabled through this program. These are represented as the highlighted pins in this map. In response to the request from Council, this slide outlines next steps that administration would take to update and enhance the existing temporary patio program into a more formalized application. At this time, administration will continue to accept application for temporary outdoor patios for 2026, as it has been reoccurring since 2021, until the adoption of an updated, enhanced, and more formalized program on June 1st, 2026. Administration will utilize comments from internal departments, implement updates to the temporary outdoor patio guidelines and agreement, as well as the renewal or the review and approvals process. Administration will conduct research on temporary outdoor patio programs in other Canadian municipalities to evaluate best practices and implement changes. Administration will pursue legal counsel for review of the updated program. And lastly, upon Council's direction, administration would adopt an update, enhanced, and more formalized temporary outdoor patio program beginning in June 1st, 2026. The updated program would continue to continue to maintain appropriate restrictions for safe pedestrian passage with a streamlined approval process and clear operational guidelines as directed by Council. Continue without an application fee. Continue monitoring for opportunities for improvement. Circulation recipients would then expand from Fire and Roads to also include civil land development services and safety codes for review of the application. Identify communication opportunities to increase awareness, such as preparation of a web page on the town's website outlining the application process and guidelines. As outlined in the report, administration is recommending option 1, that council direct administration to continue processing temporary outdoor patio applications and pursue opportunities to identify and implement continual improvement and increase awareness of the availability of this application type. The implication of this option is that administration would proceed with the steps outlined in the report to develop an updated temporary outdoor patio program. Option 2 is that council receive this information regarding the existing temporary outdoor patio program and provide further direction. And thank you very much for your time this evening. That concludes my presentation. I'm joined by Director Mark Krasinski to aid me in any questions you may have.
Okay, Council, can I get a motion? Councillor Singh.
I'll make a motion that council direct administration to continue processing temporary outdoor patio application and pursue opportunities to identify and implement continual improvement and increase awareness of the availability of the application type. And I have a few questions. First, I want to thank the administration for the continued work on the program, and I also like to thank my council colleagues for supporting this initiative from the very beginning. That the early leadership has played an important role in helping local business to adapt and succeed. Through my conversation with the server, and that's my first question, with the conversation with several local businesses, I've heard that there can be a lack of clarity around when the patio season officially opens each year. This creates challenge for planning, whether it's booking contractors, hiring and scheduling staff, or organizing day-to-day operations. Can administration speak to whether clearer timeline or a more defined seasonal launch date could be incorporated into updated program or communication plan?
Through the chair to Councillor Singh, yes, the patio program, it runs from June to September. However, because it is seasonal, there is opportunity to extend that timeline. That's within our guidelines outlined on the within the program itself. And there's, but depending on the weather and other kind of factors, it could be extended, it might not, but it's usually run from June till September is the patio program season.
Would you clarify when the application opens for this patio seasons?
Absolutely. We can take applications year round and just have them implemented for June 1st.
Okay, thank you. And the follow-up is, we have seen the decline in the number of applications since 21. Can you please provide insight into what may be driving this reduction? For example, is it due to the businesses transitional to permanent patios, reduced demand, broader economic factors, or possibly barriers within the current program that we should be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. Through the chair to Councillor Singh. One potential kind of driver of this is the actual promotion of the temporary patio program. In 2021, we created a website that wasn't carried over to the new website, so that there wasn't any transition there. And with the new program that we're looking at enhancing, that would be included within that program, is actual creation of website, showing applicants what the steps would look like, and then promoting no fees and those kinds of things. So I think the promotion of this a little bit more would result in some additional applications.
Thank you. I have one more. I'll wait till my fellow colleagues ask.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you. Everything seems to look pretty good to me. My main question would be what the utility in making the same businesses reapply year after year for a temporary patio would be. Why, once you're in the program once, why do you have to reapply the next year? What would be the utility in that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Through the chair to Councillor Wilson, we need to ensure that if there's any changes within the actual program or the patio itself that are reflected. So again, changes within even street designs or within the private areas, we need to ensure that there is pedestrian passage. So ensuring that happens every year. Again, with the no fee and the quick turnaround, we don't see it as a risk to having reapplications.
Okay, fair enough. That would be the only portion I'd highlight. It's not my motion, but I don't know how Councillor Singh feels about that. But if I were creating this, I would make it where it just rolls over for the next year. If the same business wanted to incorporate the same patio without complaints, why not just eliminate that paperwork, at least on the business end? But I'll throw it to Councillor Singh for any thoughts. Otherwise, I think it's a good program, and I like to see this being used around town.
Yeah, if I could just add, with the update of this program, that is something that we could absolutely consider and look into, see if other municipalities are doing that or treating it the same way. But it's something that we could look into.
For example, on that topic, a lot of things we do in town are complaint driven. I know that we often don't look into things unless they're complaint driven. So I'd feel like this could be run much the same. If there are no complaints for the temporary patio, why not roll it to the next year? I would think.
Absolutely. Through the chair to Councillor Wilson, we could include municipal enforcement into the circulation design as well to see if there are any complaints within that. However, we would have to look at the origin of the complaint itself and determine that, but something that we can absolutely consider.
Excellent. Thanks, Rob.
Yep.
Not seeing other comments before I go back to Councillor Singh. I'll ask a few questions myself. I'm wondering exactly how we consider parking throughout all of this. Are the patios allowed to exist on public parking, or what if it's in a shopping area where it's shared parking amongst a whole bunch of different businesses? How do we weigh all of that?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question to the mayor. They could absolutely exist over public parking or shared parking. That's why we circulate 2 roads to determine what that parking looks like, what alterations need to be made to accept a patio in those areas. When it comes to shared parking, if they have authorization from the other tenants within that space to support the patio, then we would consider that as well into the application process. So absolutely could go over parking or public parking or shared parking, but we do review it during the review of the application.
And in instances where there's multiple restaurants or eateries or cafes right beside each other, do we always check with the neighboring businesses before granting one patio to only one of those businesses, or how do we go about making sure it's fair?
Through to the chair, if it expands past the boundaries within that business, the business frontage, then we would ask for a letter of authorization from the adjoining businesses or the adjoining tenants to support that. Otherwise, if it's within that boundary area, then they're able to apply.
Okay. And then, so it's interesting and encouraging that some of the businesses that use the temporary patios went on to make permanent patios here. Are we actively encouraging these to be kind of viewed as a pilot project? And if it works out, we invite the businesses at the end, say, hey, have you thought about making this a permanent thing?
Absolutely. To the chair, we're always willing and happy to help businesses expand their business and expand their footprints. And so the availability of the pre-application through this as well will help coach them in that if they were to do that. But if those opportunities exist, we'll work with them in order to do so and formalize that more.
And to my knowledge, I don't believe there are any rooftop patios in Cochrane. Could this program be used by somebody who wants to explore building a rooftop patio on their business?
To the chair, I don't believe there are any rooftop patios. That is a different review for sure, because we have to consider height, the safety considerations to that as well. I would have to check on that. This is specifically ground level, but there is something that we can look into.
Would we need an additional motion or a bylaw decision from council in order to enable administration to consider those applications? Or could that be done within the framework of what we're doing here? Obviously, it would be different criteria.
I believe so, but I'll pass it over to my director to comment on that.
Did our CAO have something to say? Okay.
To the mayor, in that situation, I think we'd struggle with the expediency of the review and application. Obviously, putting a patio on a rooftop has additional safety concerns. So the main concern would be with the expediency of the review. So it'd be a real struggle for us to maintain a 7-day review and approval rate for something like a rooftop patio, particularly with it being, as we mentioned, one of the first rooftop patios in Cochrane, if we were able to get one. But we could look at opportunities to maybe come back to council and propose a mechanism where we could promote or provide a period where we could look at exceptions to different application fees in order to induce and promote it for a short time limited pilot.
Yeah, perhaps beyond the scope of this, but I would be very interested in entertaining that in the months or years ahead. Rooftop patios are pretty fun. Mr. Hyndman?
If I can, Mr. Mayor, I think it's outside of the scope of this project. I think our team would be happy if a business owner came forward and proposed a rooftop patio to go through a DP process to review it, but I don't think this is the appropriate mechanism to do that.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Council, anything else? All right, thank you, everybody. Council, all in favor? Carried. Oh, your light wasn't on. Councillor Singh. Oh, well, so we did not vote.
No.
Procedurally. Delete that part of the footage.
Sorry.
Councillor Singh.
That's right. So just as a follow-up to, and on Councillor Wilson's point, would it be helpful to understand whether administration has considered setting up a regular review cycle or reporting mechanism so council can monitor participation trends, timelines, and overall program effectiveness year over year, so that if businesses are going smooth and then they don't have to apply year after year, makes life easier for everybody. So if that could be part of the review process or feedback process, could be something.
Yeah, through the chair too, Councillor Singh, absolutely, we can look into that and provide that back, or review that anyway and see if that will be feasible with the application process.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and for future reference, I'm probably not allowed to rewind time to council votes, so we'll pretend I didn't say that and it didn't happen. Now, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Next up, Housing Needs Assessment. Gina Vandenberg. Not yet. Please, take it away.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am, for those in the community who don't know me, I am Gina Vandenberg. I'm the housing strategist for the town of Cochrane. So today I will be presenting information received through the town's engagement on the community's housing landscape. The presentation on the What We Heard report is not intended to offer specific recommendations or actions for approval. Rather, it summarizes the experiences and needs expressed from residents, stakeholders, service providers, developers, youth and young adults, seniors, and people with lived experience that will inform the final housing needs assessment that's targeted for June 1st. Much of the information contained in the report support the anecdotal information that has been shared during informal engagement since April of 2025. In addition to validating the data presented in the preliminary analysis that was provided back in January. Therefore, the information presented to you this evening may be similar to what Council has heard in conversations with members of the community. Nevertheless, this is an important step toward understanding the community's housing needs today and planning responsibly for tomorrow. So today's presentation has 4 objectives. First, to present what we heard from residents, to ground the work in real community experiences. Second, to outline the key housing pressures alongside opportunities to respond. Third, to support informed evidence-based decision-making for future housing planning. And finally, to advance the final housing needs assessment and next steps. Ultimately, the What We Heard report is a critical component to the housing needs assessment, ensuring that data is supported by documented community input. This is not only best practice, it is a key requirement for many provincial and federal funding programs, which expect municipalities to demonstrate that meaningful engagement has been completed and directly informs their housing analysis. It also equips local community organizations with the evidence needed to secure government funding, enabling them to deliver the social services essential for the community to thrive. The success of this engagement could not have been achieved without the outstanding support of our FCSS and FRN colleagues, community organizations, and developer groups. And so I give a heartfelt thank you to all of them. This was truly a significant community engagement effort. More than 676 people participated, including through surveys, pop-up events, focus groups, and interviews. We received 549 survey respondents, including 530 adult and 19 youth responses. We intentionally sought out diverse voices. Participants included seniors, youth, families, Indigenous community members, renters, homeowners, developers, schools, service agencies, and individuals experiencing housing insecurity. We recognize that housing challenges are not experienced equally, and therefore we wanted to ensure future planning incorporated these different realities. Overall, this broad participation gives us confidence that the findings reflect meaningful community perspectives across many life stages and experiences. The clearest message from engagement was that housing affordability is the top housing concern in Cochrane. Residents across income levels and demographics expressed concern about their ability to remain in the community, find suitable housing, or plan for the future. Housing is no longer a niche issue affecting select demographics. It has become a community-wide issue. However, 7 major themes did consistently emerge: affordability, cost of living, rental supply, housing diversity, infrastructure capacity, senior and young adult housing needs, and housing insecurity leading to pressure on social services. These issues are interconnected as housing does not exist in isolation. Rather, it affects transportation, workforce attraction, economic resilience, health, and quality of life. The most apparent message from engagement is that housing cost is the core challenge. Approximately 40% of respondents identified ownership or rental costs as a personal concern. In addition, 27% are unsure they can remain in their home, with nearly half of whom cited affordability pressures such as insufficient income. The chart reinforces this, with cost of ownership and renting ranking as the top concerns, followed by limited housing options and aging in place. These challenges are particularly impacting youth and young adults, seniors, and middle-income households, highlighting broad community-wide pressure. This slide highlights a key theme we heard throughout engagement, that housing challenges in Cochrane are closely tied to broader cost of living pressures. Residents spoke about rising everyday costs, particularly groceries, gas, and utilities, while at the same time noting that wages are not keeping up. For those on fixed incomes, including seniors, this creates even greater strain and limits their housing options. We also heard concerning impacts on families, including situations where youth are helping support household income, which reflects how significant these pressures have become. Even households with average employment incomes are feeling strain, indicating housing policy should be considered alongside broader affordability and economic development strategies. So while housing affordability is a major issue, it's part of a larger picture. A key structural challenge in Cochrane's housing system, a constrained rental market. Currently, the rental market is heavily dominated by secondary suites, such as basement and garden suites with very few purpose-built rental buildings. In fact, nearly 90% of rental units fall into the secondary category, which significantly limits both availability and choice for renters. Through engagement, residents identified several challenges with this type of housing. These include limited availability, concerns about the condition of some units, and more importantly, a lack of stability, which is further compounded by what some had described as rental monopolies. Because of these units are tied to individual homeowners, in terms of the secondary suites, renters may face uncertainty if the owner sells, repurposes the space, or changes its use. So that can also apply to both rentals as well as secondary suites. Currently, about 81% of Cochrane's housing stock has 3 or more bedrooms, which means the market is heavily weighted toward larger single detached housing. At the same time, there is a clear gap in the types of housing that many residents are looking for, particularly apartments, townhomes, and smaller, more attainable units. This lack of diversity limits options across the housing continuum that particularly affects seniors trying to find suitable alternatives, young adults facing challenges entering the market due to a lack of entry-level housing, and families priced out of home ownership. Many individuals linked housing growth with infrastructure concerns, whereby many cited that infrastructure is not keeping pace with growth. These infrastructure issues included traffic congestion, water and sewer capacity, transit limitations, and distance from support services. The message was not necessarily opposition to growth, but a desire for growth that is coordinated, serviced, and sustainable. This slide highlights a growing and increasingly underserved population in Cochrane, our seniors. Through engagement, we heard that there are significant gaps in assisted living, long-term care, accessible housing, and supports that allow people to age in place. At the same time, many seniors expressed a strong desire to remain in the community as they age. However, due to limited options, some are becoming what's referred to as overhoused, living in homes that no longer meet their needs, while others are leaving Cochrane altogether to find appropriate housing and care. The data on the right reinforces this, showing that one of the top concerns among older residents is the inability to age in place, along with affordability and lack of suitable housing options. The youth and young adult perspective is particularly important because it speaks to Cochrane's future. This slide highlights a key long-term challenge, retaining youth and young adults in Cochrane. Survey results showed 58% expect they will need to leave Cochrane, while 71% said housing will be hard or unaffordable. Participants also noted rising mental health concerns linked to financial stress and housing uncertainty. So the main barriers that were identified included limited rental options, low wages relative to housing costs, transportation challenges, and distance from social networks, post-secondary education, employment, and other services. And so this signals a broader community sustainability issue. If young people leave, Cochrane risks losing future workers, families, community leaders, and can impact the community's economic sustainability. Through engagement, nearly 6 in 10 respondents indicated that housing insecurity has increased over the past 3 years, which signals a growing concern. What's important to note is that housing insecurity is not always visible. While there are instances of visible homelessness, much of it is hidden. We heard examples of people couch surfing, living in vehicles or RVs, staying in motels, or living in temporary or unsuitable spaces such as garages. This reflects a shift in who is experiencing housing challenges, including working individuals and families who may not have traditionally needed support. Building on that, as housing insecurity increases, we're also seeing growing pressure on the broader social support system. The slide highlights how those housing challenges are translating into increased demand for services across the community. We heard that systems like the food bank, mental health supports, and family services are all experiencing higher demand. Importantly, this demand is not limited to traditionally vulnerable populations. Service providers noted that more middle-income households are now accessing supports, which reflects how affordability pressures are impacting a wider range of residents. At the same time, many of these services are facing capacity constraints, making it more difficult to respond to growing needs. We also asked the community what solutions they see as most important for moving forward. The public response was constructive and solutions-focused. There was strong alignment across engagement on several key priorities. First, a clear need for more affordable housing across both ownership and rental. Second, expanding rental options, particularly more stable, purpose-built rentals. Third, increasing housing diversity, including apartments, townhomes, and smaller units to better match different life stages and incomes. We also heard the importance of supportive and accessible housing, especially for seniors and those with complex needs. And finally, many participants emphasize the need for stronger partnerships, particularly with nonprofits and other organizations, including senior levels of government, to help deliver a broader range of housing solutions. To summarize what we heard across engagement activities. First, housing challenges in Cochrane are widespread and continuing to grow, affecting residents of all stages of life. Second, there are a clear mismatch between the housing we have and the housing people need, particularly when it comes to rental options and smaller, more attainable homes. We also heard that affordability pressures are impacting not just low-income households, but increasingly middle-income residents as well. At the same time, growth is placing pressure on infrastructure and services, reinforcing the need for coordinated planning. And importantly, there is recognition that addressing these challenges will require collaboration across all orders of government, as well as partnerships with nonprofits and the private sector, meaning the town can take a leadership role to initiate change, but will rely on all sectors to ensure success in advancing housing for all incomes and stages of life. So what comes next in moving forward? First, we are anticipating on finalizing the housing needs assessment by June 1st. This will consolidate both the data analysis and the community input we've gathered. From there, we will move into developing the housing strategy. This will focus on translating the findings into clear policy direction, strategic priorities, and an action plan supported by Council. Following Council's approval, we will begin implementation, identifying the immediate initiatives based on Council's priorities, timelines, and responsibilities to address the community's housing needs. Overall, this work moves us from understanding the challenges to taking meaningful, coordinated action. So in closing, I'd like to thank everyone who did contribute their time and lived experience to this important component of the housing needs assessment. Housing touches every part of community life, and for us, we recognize strong housing policy begins with listening to our community and understanding its needs. So I want to say thank you to Council for allowing us the time to share this information. And I'll invite Matt Knox, Director of Social Development, and we will welcome your questions.
Councillor McFadden.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll move the recommended action to receive the community housing needs assessment for information. Thank you very much for your thorough report. I'm looking forward to the complete report. I was very gratified to see the thorough engagement that was done and the diversity there. I think I did have one question about one of the areas of engagement. Was it the YAP engagement? What does that mean?
Through the chair to Councillor McFadden, YAP is the Youth Action Program. So it's led by the FCSS, and they bring together youth from ages 14, I think, to 29 to discuss youth-related priorities or issues that affect them.
Okay, great. I just wasn't familiar with the acronym. So I really appreciate the report, and the need seems well done. Kind of the area of highest interest for me right now is when it comes to the housing diversity question and how we can, I assume it's going to be part of the final report, what type of policy initiatives we can do to leverage on that. And I know some of the feedback in recent conversations I've heard even around the council bench is, townhomes do fit part of that, but the built form of townhomes is very difficult for a lot of folks, seniors, anyone with mobility issues. And so what are the tools that we can bring into play to get into that mid-range housing, that townhome priced solution, but in some sort of a different built form? So that would be something I would like to begin to explore. And then the next question I had, so the housing diversity and any solutions we have to that, what policy changes we can make. And then you'd identified that the growing concern with affordable housing, and I know there's a set understanding of what the definition of affordable housing is within the affordable housing business and community, but when residents are responding, what do they mean by affordable housing? Do they mean, they probably don't mean 10% below market. So do we know when they're saying, I have a concern about affordable housing, what do they mean? Do we have an understanding of that?
Through the chair to Councillor McFadden, no, we did not indicate definitions for how people interpreted what affordability. Generally speaking, it was whether people were struggling to pay their bills and to pay their rent, whether they had sufficient amount remaining to pay for those other necessities. If they understood it as if they were putting the majority of their income towards shelter and not leaving anything remaining, that was an affordability issue.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to get some clarity on that definition, because I know whenever the affordable housing team is helping us get educated, understand the lens, it has a certain definition. But I do know that even speaking informally to the community and friends and neighbors, affordability comes up, and it means something subtly different, but still important. So I appreciate the report. Like I said, what I'm really looking forward in is how we can help with that housing diversity, and I think that's probably a good conversation to have with the development community about what can we do to get a different product to market that meets that need. So those are kind of my two big questions, but my first lens on it is a very great report, so thank you for the work on it.
I have an interesting idea to share with you on that, but first I'll go to Councillor Gill.
Thank you for the presentation. Will the final report clearly distinguish what the town/council can directly influence? Will it tell us what requires provincial, federal, public, private sector investment or partnerships?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Gale. Yes, the final housing needs assessment is going to be providing recommendations based on what the town can do and where our jurisdiction ends versus what we can advocate to the federal and provincial governments in terms of funding and other policy initiatives from their end to help facilitate the affordable housing piece within municipalities.
Yeah, just to add on to that, and I think that's also important for us when we're chatting with the community. Like if you look back on some of the things that the community specifically were saying, this is what we want and this is what our ideas are. I think some of that too is that understanding of like, we agree and we're going to advocate sort of thing, or we agree and here's what we can do to change it. So I think, what Gina's highlighted around the final housing needs assessment is going to be, I think, a myriad of things that we could do and advocate for, and then it'll be more of that with the next step into the housing strategy, what we choose to action, what we choose to prioritize, because there's going to be a lot there, and it'd be super fantastic for us to be able to do all of that right away, but it'll be a bit of a process there. Yes.
Excellent, thank you. And my follow-up, I guess, is will the final assessment, kind of sounds like it will, but will it align housing recommendations with our infrastructure capacity, transportation, even healthcare, going into provincial ways? Where's that going to work?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Gale. It will touch on the infrastructure gaps and how that plays into the construction and development of more affordable homes. It will not go into specific detail on what types of infrastructure related to, say, urgent care or hospitals. It will note that and touch on it, but it's not a key focus of the infrastructure gaps. It's largely identifying what services are required to support directly the construction of the of housing.
Okay, fair enough, I guess. Just to follow up, I guess, on that a little bit, it sounds like it will again, but are we going to get suggestions for example, social services that we need to expand on if we're going to, for example, do an affordable housing project? Is there going to be social services correlated, I guess, that we should do to keep up with that?
So, through the chair to Councillor Gale, I think that's such a great question because it highlights again that around affordability and housing, it's complex. It's not just a housing solution that's necessary. And so the housing needs assessment itself will really focus more around housing, like pure and simple. But your point of that idea of, you know, this being kind of a system and more complex and the social services required, that's something that we will be coming forward through social development, through our social needs assessment, which is coming later this year, is where we would dive into that. There is tons of great data from this that we'll be embedding into that, but the actual final report isn't going to be really heavy on the social services side. We're going to take what we've learned from that, embed it into our social needs assessment, and there'll be recommendations that will have more of that inclusive look for the whole of our community, and probably some connections to housing, knowing how this has turned out. But the actual report itself that we'll get in June, no, I wouldn't say it would have that full detail you're looking for, but that it is a future item for my team, and we'll be here later in the year with that.
Yeah, I think this is just one, it's not just one thing, it doesn't exist in isolation, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how it all kind of works together long term. But thank you.
Councillor Singh?
Thank you for the presentation. So, question is in regards to senior housing. So residents wants to age in place, but suitable housing options appear limited. What would be a complete aging in place housing continuum looks like locally?
Through the chair to Councillor Singh, the housing needs assessment will not necessarily be exploring specifically what some aging in place would look like. I do understand that there is going to be some best practices that are going to be incorporated as part of the report that will provide examples of continuing care and independent seniors living, examples that are from across Canada. So that is something that we can borrow from and consider as part of the housing strategy.
So no as such particular for seniors?
Not at this time.
Okay,
No, we
so
we haven't yet progressed to that point where we can and this is where that collaboration with other not-for-profit organizations like Rocky View Foundation and Bethany, where we can collaborate with them to see where there might be some interest, as well as opportunities to invite senior developers that are specifically focused on seniors independent care, where we will be exploring that as to invite them into the community too. So that's just part of the process. We're working on doing this chronologically, so that we ensure that we're capturing all types of housing as part of the continuum.
So maybe I can add to that. So again, through the chair to Councillor Singh, I think the challenge when it comes to aging in place is that there is a difference between being able to age in place inside of your own home and then aging in place when it comes to that extensive needed care like that. Do you need you have someone come in and help you with your house, and then you need daily care, you need to be in a facility or things like that. And a model that I appreciate and heard about very early when I started was this idea of, some people want to live and die in their home, and if you're lucky to do that, fantastic. If you're not, is there a way to age in community rather than age fully in place? And I think the part that we're focused on in this is more of that if you're still able to have independent living or low support needs in your home. And so it'd be more about suitable types for accessible living and things like that. When we step into that kind of, I would say, advanced care stage, that's where it gets a little more complicated and is much more specialized in the health space in terms of number of beds and things like that. So you'll see that our report will be focused on, yes, accessibility and that ability to, age in place, age in community. Are we focused on building homes that people can live in independently for as long as possible? Yes, all of those things. But when we start talking about that specific, and I can't remember the full levels of care, supportive and continuing and things like that's I think more of that medical side that we're not as focused on in this, but definitely something, as Gina highlighted, that our partners or community members that we work with, they would have more of those details and part of their planning and advocacy work too.
Follow-up, how do we measure success? Reduce cost burdens, increase supplies, or something else?
Do you want to, how would we measure success of our housing needs assessment,
Yeah.
housing strategy, everything in general? Yeah, do you want to touch?
Please. Through you, Chair, to Councillor Singh. So that will be developed when we complete the housing strategy. We will be developing some of those performance measures as part of the strategy. And then through the implementation, we will be able to determine how far we've achieved those key deliverables and those goals. So through the What We Heard report, that won't be part of that, but it'll definitely be something we'll be evaluating as part of the housing strategy.
And maybe to jump in and touch on that, you know, when I talked about that idea of we're going to have a myriad of different options for us to pursue, well, success will depend on what council decides to focus on. I think that's the piece. Like if we're having a workshop with you and you're saying our primary focus is affordability and there are the levers that we can pull on as a municipality, that should guide our success. What are the outcomes we're trying to achieve? Knowing that, you know, there could be 30 things we could do, if we're choosing 5, that's how we're going to measure it. So, I mean, from a very general perspective, we're working in a large system that, you know, we wouldn't be able to necessarily solve alone. It'll require the province and the federal government, but our success will be defined by what we as a municipality decide to do with this, I think,
Sure.
is really the key answer there.
Thank you.
Councillor McDonald?
Thank you. I've got so many notes from when I read this, and they are not organized well, so I apologize in advance. A lot of them are just kind of comments, not questions. I wrote down maintaining the town's strong community character while remaining livable and inclusive for people of all incomes, ages, and abilities. And I stole that from the report. I don't remember who came up with it or where it was, but what a beautiful vision for Cochrane's housing. I wrote down, if you care about the economy, you care about housing, which I just fundamentally believe that. So anyone who's watching tonight who thinks this affordable housing conversation has no effect on me, the economy and housing lean on one another. So I would challenge you that you do care about housing. I pulled out of the report, in discussions with developers, many indicated an interest in private sector solutions, but noted that the absence of incentives combined with permit delays, stagnant applications, and community pushback directly affects the types of housing constructed. Do you have any further context on that comment?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor McDonald. No, at this time we don't, but we will be building that into the final housing needs assessment. So it is also addressed in the final report, but we are going to be fleshing that out in more detail to provide additional context as to why that is happening.
Okay, great. Looking forward to hearing more about that. Okay, and then I thought it was really interesting how often the report came back to our lack of purpose-built rentals. So I think so much on that. The seniors being overhoused was also very, very interesting. And the kind of follow through train of thought that if they have nowhere appropriate to move to, they're gonna hold on to that house for longer, which creates a safety issue and an isolation issue, and also doesn't let that house move back into the cycle of ownership. I think apartments are such a natural choice for expanding into accessible design by virtue of being single level. And then I imagine apartments that are entry level all the way up to higher end, and how that could meet such a wide range of needs for our residents. Like I said, I don't have a lot of questions. I mostly just, it just kind of got my brain going. While I've got you, any update on the RCMP lands?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor McDonald. No, we do not have any further updates on that. We understand that they are in the process of preparing the posting. The federal government is preparing the posting, and they will be informing us as soon as they have it live.
Preparing the posting?
To have it, to seek out proponents on so they will be having a posting on the Federal Lands Initiative website.
Specific to an affordable housing project?
That's right.
Is that what you mean? Okay.
Yes.
That is an update. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so through the chair to Council McDonald, so part of that too, just I think that is important, was that we were able to provide them all of that information like we had discussed. Gina was very thorough on ensuring that any interested proponent will have all the information in terms of parking requirements, everything that they need to include for that to be successful, and all the feedback that we were going to support. So they have all that information. We're waiting on that, and it's something that once it's live, we'll share with council in an update.
Okay, interesting, thank you. And then my last question is, and I know you kind of touched on it, Gina, what happens next, but when do we get to see you guys again, specific to this?
That will be through the chair to Councillor McDonald, that will be June 1st. We will be coming to council with the final housing needs assessment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think that just leaves me. The one thing I want to share, and this was actually going to be part of my mayor's report, but just with regards to the missing middle piece that Councillor McFadden kind of touched on there. When last week we had the developers liaison group meeting, and as part of that conversation, I raised with the developers that they should bring forward any policy ideas they have that would provide better outcomes in our developments and communities, and bring that to CPC. One of the things that very quickly came up among the developers, and there's a lot of nodding heads around the table, was that they have a real hard time selling townhomes, but they believe at that price point there is a missing product type in Cochrane, and they would like us to look at amending our bylaws to essentially allow them to make houses that would be the same size as a townhome, but as a single detached unit. Because for people who are buying their first home, it's very important to a lot of their customers and new families and young people that if they're buying into a new home, they want to own their own property and own all their own walls. And right now, there's no way for them to build a townhome-sized single detached unit, and that was an option that they wanted to see brought to Cochrane. They could replace a lot of our townhomes, and they think would make a lot of people happier. So that was something I was going to bring up in the mayor's report, and I think it speaks to a piece of that missing middle that we've talked a lot about as a group. Another idea I had, it did not come up at that meeting, but it came up at a separate meeting last week where I talked with Councillor McDonald. Perhaps you can comment or not comment, but I myself feel that there's also a bit of a missing piece with apartments that have larger rooms, or a larger room count, sorry. So we have like 1, 2, and sometimes 3 bedroom apartments, but for somebody who's in that apartment price point, there are no 4 or 5 bedroom apartments in Cochrane. And maybe it needs to be something more along the lines of stacked bungalows. But anyways, I wanted to bring both those items up because right here in the report on page 10, it says there's this problem where there is that missing middle, as we talk about a lot, and that very conversation was something I was going to touch on in my mayor's report later this evening. But I'll turn it back to Councillor McFadden.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gold, for advancing that conversation with the developer group, and really glad that they're interested in helping us find the solution to the missing middle and the different options. So I like to hear that. Just wanted to make sure we advocated for the conversation we had with Councillor Fedeko about something for people with bad knees, those of us who are over 50 apparently, but that type of piece. And and one of the conversations I even had at the trade show was the need for affordable bungalows. And I can understand that could be cost prohibitive from a developer's point of view. But yeah, if we can, I appreciate the developers are looking at, a different product, but it would be great to see a number of different products coming to market, not just, R1's townhomes and one new product. It would be great to see a diversity of those missing middle options as well. So thank you very much for advocating and continuing that conversation. I just wanted to give you a shout out for that.
Sure, thanks. And I believe we do have a motion. You made the original motion, correct? If you didn't, can you? Council? Totally did. Yeah, that's what I thought. Anything else? No, thank you very much. Call the question. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council admin, are we good to keep pushing through the agenda without a break? Kate, let's dive into IDP and ICF. We got Mrs. Raves and Mr. O'Clair coming back.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today on the terms of reference for the Intermunicipal Development Plan, or IDP, and the Intermunicipal Collaboration Framework, or ICF. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide an overview of the IDP and ICF projects, outline key sections of the terms of reference, and seek Council's approval for the IDP and ICF terms of reference. Both the IDP and the ICF are required under the Municipal Government Act. We were previously exempt from these requirements as a member of the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board. That board had adopted the Regional Growth Plan, which was a regional-wide land use and growth framework. However, since the dissolution of the CMRB in 2025, the Minister of Municipal Affairs has clarified through a ministerial order that former members are now required to develop these documents, and the deadline for both is November 2027. Cochrane does not have an ICF, so this will be a new framework for us. We do, however, have a very outdated IDP from 2001, which we're taking the opportunity to review and update now. ICFs and IDPs are required for municipalities that share a common border. For us, of course, this is Rocky View County. Rocky View County's council approved these terms of reference last week on April 28th. We have an established relationship with the county, which is lending well to the work so far. This relationship is further established through the Ranch House Accord, which was finalized in 2010 and provides a framework for intermunicipal collaboration and coordination. The Ranch House Accord's core principles of commitment, respect, and trust will be embedded within the updated IDP and ICF. By incorporating these values into the statutory frameworks that guide land use planning and intermunicipal relations, the Ranch House Accord will no longer be required as a standalone agreement. We also have the Intermunicipal Committee, or IMC, which works to enhance communication between our municipalities and discuss matters of mutual interest. Elected members from both municipalities are appointed to serve on this committee, which is required to meet at least twice a year and to report back to their fellow council. Our appointed members include Mayor Nagel, Councillor Gale, and Councillor Wilson. So we'll start first with an overview of what an ICF is. An ICF sets out how municipalities work together on shared services. It includes which services are shared, who is responsible for what, such as delivery and maintenance, and how costs are shared, so who is funding what. It also has to include a review period and a dispute resolution process. We're still reviewing example ICFs from across the province, but one thing I would flag here is that an ICF is generally an umbrella or overarching agreement that sets out the general principles, governance, and processes for collaboration. The specific service arrangements, like cost sharing, service levels, and operations for each of the services, are generally detailed in the appendices and schedules. But saying that, we'll know more about what this looks like and what will work best for Cochrane and Rocky View County once we have a chance to finish our review of existing ICFs and engage with council and the public. Under the Municipal Government Act, there are 5 mandatory services that need to be covered in an ICF. Transportation, water and wastewater, including stormwater, solid waste, emergency services, and recreation. The ICF can also include other shared services, but both parties must agree to include them. ICFs are not about revenue sharing or creating mandatory partnerships. I'll now turn it over to Rob O'Clair, Manager of Planning, to give you an overview of IDPs.
Thank you, Christine. Hello again, Council, and thank you for allowing me to present this evening. So, what is an IDP? An IDP is an intermunicipal development plan, which is a statutory document created by neighboring municipalities to coordinate land use, development, infrastructure, and services along a shared boundary. It sits above the town's municipal development plan in the planning hierarchy, and it receives guidance from the Municipal Government Act. The IDP provides collaborative framework to manage growth, resolve conflicts, and ensure an efficient, consistent planning across borders. However, similar to our MDP, the IDP does not get into detailed designs, cost-sharing agreements, joint use agreements, or annexation agreements. Instead, it provides that overarching plan that subsequent plans and policies can reflect, ensure alignment and coordination. The town of Cochrane and Rocky View County adopted the current IDP in 2001. The 2001 IDP is quite outdated, and it does not really reflect, or it may not reflect, the current pressures that the town is seeing today. From 2018 to 2025, land use decisions were in the region were directed through the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board, or CRMB. However, that board dissolved and the tools adopted by that board no longer exist. Upon the dissolution of CMRB, the town of Cochrane and Rocky View County determined that an update to the existing IDP would be in the best interest of both municipalities. A modernized IDP will better situate the municipalities to address current and future concerns, pressures, and opportunities. It will help strengthen collaboration with our regional partners or neighbors, reduce potential for land use conflicts, and better reflect the municipal boundaries, growth pressures, infrastructure priorities, and community expectations. Looking at the overall map area, there are 3 areas to focus. The municipal boundary, so this is the legally surveyed area separating Cochrane and Rocky View County. This is used as a starting point for the discussions in the policy building. Then there's the study area, which is a subset of the plan area. It is a provisional area that is used for technical analysis, looking at environmental constraints, traffic impacts, and corridor and regional assets. It is helpful placemakers that aid the working group and council in determining what should be included in the final plan. Finally, the plan area. This is the final geographical area ultimately defined within the IDP, in which it includes policies, frameworks, restrictions, and regulations that apply. Incorporated into the plan area will be notification areas as well. So these areas will serve as opportunities for other municipalities to comment, or the other municipality to comment and potentially influence applications close to shared boundaries. The scope of the IDP work is focused in the 4 main areas of growth and land use. This helps guide the orderly, sustainable, and fiscal responsibility growth expectations, and impacts from the future growth, while ensuring natural and environmental considerations. Next is boundaries and interface. Here we will look at the characteristics that make Cochrane and Rocky View unique, differentiating one municipality from the other, and the planning involved in these areas. Third is transportation, working collaboratively with a focus on our major links and key roadways, outlining policies, roles, and responsibilities. And finally, looking at utilities and servicing. Similar to transportation, it establishes policies, roles, and responsibilities, and the coordination of current and future corridors. I'll now pass it back to Christine to finish the final few slides.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, so these next several slides outline what else the terms of reference cover. The framework is a framework is established for responsibilities and decision-making at 3 levels. The first level being the working group, so administration, and we're responsible for complete day-to-day tasks, project management, and delivery of the project. The Intermunicipal Committee, or IMC, receives project updates, reviews and comments on topics of mutual interest, and updates their respective councils. The IMC also plays an important role in the dispute resolution process. And council, at minimum, approve the TOR and the final IDP and ICF. We also outline the project phases. You can see here that the IDP and ICF project phases line up quite nicely. Different types of work will be required for each project, but they can be divided into 5 phases. Initiation, which we're finishing up right now, background, drafting of the documents, revisions, and approvals. We have a project management plan and project schedule for both the IDP and ICF that is quite a bit more detailed in terms of timelines and deliverables. Again, we're working with a timeline of November 2027 to have the projects approved by council. We are currently developing a joint communications plan as well as a joint engagement strategy for the projects. The communications plan is more about internal communications and shared core messaging. Our communications teams will also help identify branding and communication methods tailored to each municipality. For the engagement, the municipalities intend to hire an external consultant to help support the work, which will be conducted in 2 stages. The first stage of engagement is about sharing the project information and seeking initial feedback. The second stage will be much more in-depth and involves sharing a draft of the IDP and the ICF for feedback. Engagement will take place with council, administration, developers, the public, landowners, and other stakeholders. We have budgeted $270,000 for the IDP and $60,000 for the ICF for a total of $330,000, which is shared equally between both municipalities, so split right down the middle for us. This includes internal costs such as meeting expenses, as well as funds for technical studies, legal review, mapping and document design, and an engagement consultant. I'm very pleased to report tonight that Council was successful in its submission of an Alberta Community Partnership Grant for $200,000, which we will share with Rocky View County. We don't foresee additional budget being required, but if this is the case, the request will need to be brought to each respective council for approval. Tonight, administration is seeking council's approval of the Cochrane and Rocky View County Intermunicipal Development Plan Terms of Reference and the Intermunicipal Collaboration and Framework Terms of Reference. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight, and Rob and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, before I turn it over to council, or sorry, I saw your hand come. Well, it was just since I'm on the committee, I hope you won't mind if I make a few comments before I turn it over to council, as I normally do. Could you please skip back to that map of the study area with the blue lines? One of the, yes, that's the one. One of the things I wanted to clearly articulate for council members who weren't in the meeting, as well as any members of the public who may be watching, that map, and admin, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that map, it does not necessarily mean that those are the areas we're talking about development happening. That's the study area, those are the regions that we are just discussing. Anything beyond those blue lines is just beyond the scope of this conversation. So if people look at that map, they think, oh my gosh, Cochrane's talking about like quadrupling the size of town through that. That is not what this process is. One of the parts of this conversation I think is very exciting is we're not only talking about where future growth may happen in the decades ahead, but also where growth is not going to happen. And something that was clearly articulated as a joint interest by both municipalities that were in the first meeting was that none of us want to see pure urban sprawl all the way from Calgary straight up to Cochrane in the decades ahead. And this conversation is actually the avenue by which we can ensure that doesn't happen. And so I just want to clarify on that map, if anybody from the public is looking in, that does not mean that this process is looking at growing out in that whole area. But anyways, I shall pass it over to Councillor Wilson, who is also on the committee and in that conversation.
Yes, thanks. Well said, Morgan. I had the same takeaway from our first meeting, our first intermunicipal meeting, that both parties were very interested in how we manage our growth, and I thought it was very promising on that end. My only question, I would move option 1, I guess, since we don't have a motion on the floor. My only question was about the $200,000 grant. Could you just touch on how we achieved that and how it came about? That's a lot of money.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Wilson, thank you for the question. So the Alberta Community Partnership Grant was for municipalities who were interested in doing collaborative work with another municipality. So it caught our eye, and we reached out to Rocky View County to see if they would support us in our application. And so we put it forward specifically for these 2 projects to ask for the maximum amount, which was $200,000. And then we found out just a few weeks ago, actually, that we were successful.
Excellent. Well done. $270,000 would have my attention real fast, but when you subtract 200 out of it with a grant, and we're sharing, I believe, the remainder with Rocky View for planning documents that we legislatively have to complete, sounds like a great outcome, and very pleased to see it.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll just note that our remaining amount is only 65,000 if you split what's left over, and it's already in our 2026 budget. Council had approved it under the strategic services section, so we're in good shape.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gale, who's also on the committee.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm really excited to see where this goes. I just have kind of a quick question. We talked about dispute resolution. I was just wondering where that landed and what we kind of settled on for dispute resolution.
Through the chair to Councillor Gale. So the dispute resolution under the IDP and ICF are pretty similar. They go through CAO, like the negotiating teams will go to their CAO. Then it's kind of facilitated discussion, then mediation. The IDP will go to non-binding arbitration. So, because this is a land use planning document, we didn't want to bind council into a situation that they didn't agree to. So that one is a little bit different than the ICF. The ICF actually has mandatory arbitration in the sense that under the MGA, if we don't agree to an ICF within the time frame, or in future years, if there's a review and we can't land on an agreement, we actually have to go to mandated arbitration to come to a conclusion. So similar up until a point, and then it's non-binding for IDP and binding for ICF, but hopefully we don't come to that point.
Thank you. That was my only question.
Councillor McFadden.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Congratulations on the grant hunting. You said the balance is covered by what we had passed in the existing budget. Can you mind, is there are we ahead of the game there? Had we budgeted for just the 65,000, or had we budgeted for the full cost, right?
Mr. Blanchett.
Through the chair to Councillor McFadden, we have that original budgeted amount, plus we have another allocation for 2027. So it's not pre-approved, but it's pre-designed for the amount that we think we may need for that second lift.
Okay, great. And then the IDP and the ICF are both mandated for November 2027. I think the ICF should be fairly easy to get done. That's pretty much outlined what it has to look like. The IDP, though, Rocky View County has to write an IDP with every one of its neighbors, so their planners are going to be pretty busy. Are we confident, or what are the odds that we're actually going to be able to get an IDP crafted in a year and a half? And is there penalties or downside to not getting it done in time?
Yeah, sure. Through the chair to Councillor McFadden, we actually already have an IDP, so we're good in that space. This is just updating it. So getting one done in that timeline, correct. It might be difficult, but since we already have one in place, we meet the requirements.
Okay, yeah, so we get the check mark of having one.
Yes.
It might just be outdated by 26 years.
Yes.
Okay, all right, we'll get the check mark, whether it's a good one or not.
Through the chair, sorry, Councillor McFadden, if I may add, I think it speaks to our relationship with Rocky View County that checkmark has been made, and they have all these other IDPs, and they're still willing and eager to sit with us to review it and update it. I can say that the work so far with the terms of reference have been extremely collaborative. We have a good team. The same team is also working with Airdrie, so it's like it's almost mirroring and recognizing where there's similarities and can save us time, also recognizing we have unique features. So I just wanted to flag and give a bit of a shout out to Rocky View County there, because I think it's great that they're willing to do this with us given their workload right now.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I really appreciate that we can identify that ongoing collaborative relationship that's going on. I know 2010 or so, the Ranch House Accord was the agreement, and then we were passing a statute back and forth for a couple of years while we got along. There was a couple of years when I don't know what happened to it, but it's great to hear that it's a collaborative relationship now. Back to the ICF. So it's been identified in the ICF, and I just wanted to highlight this. You know, we have to come up to a shared services agreement mandatory for transportation, so roads and regional connections, water, wastewater, and stormwater. So we're already kind of working. We've got a lot of examples where we work together in that. So I guess kind of a question around emergency services, if you could maybe identify what that might look like in a more, I mean, I know we've got mutual aid agreements in place, but if that can be expanded upon. And the one that has piqued my interest is recreation facilities, arenas, rec centers, programs, shared access and funding where residents benefit across the boundaries. And I'm hopeful that this is another way which we can have some strong, fair cost-sharing agreements around our recreation. So if you could maybe speak a little bit more to the recreation and what the emergency services aspect of that could look like.
Through the chair, thank you for this question. We actually don't know. I think definitions is one of the first steps that we're going to take in phase 2 is our initial engagement with council, especially through a workshop. Just what does recreation mean to you? What do you want to ensure is covered, as well as the stage 1 of engagement, and then meeting with Rocky View to see what their definition of recreation emergency services, even the things that we think we might understand as the same definition might not. So I would say to be determined, but we will definitely be seeking feedback on what that will look like.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much. And I guess maybe just a last question to my colleagues. I think those who are participating have already spoken, but any strengths, weaknesses, or flags that you wanted to identify? Just liked it all. That's good. Excellent. Okay, in that case, it certainly has my support. All my questions have been answered, and I trust our team that represents us there. So thank you very much.
Yeah, just to address the question there, strengths, I would definitely note. The conversation was honestly very positive when we first had the meeting, and there seemed to be a real alignment of purpose and goals. Rocky View, like I mentioned in my introductory comments, Rocky View has a shared interest with us of making sure we're not developing irresponsibly on each other's borders and not encouraging urban sprawl. And then they also have a real interest on the ICF piece of partnering with us so everybody can save money. We can deliver shared services through the benefits of economies of scale. The downside, those are the strengths. I would say the downside is just the magnitude of the project and the amount of time it's going to take to invest in it. But I'm very confident in our team here and very confident in the team at Rocky View. And we've got our work cut out for us is really the only downside. But that's more of a challenge, which I'm certain we'll overcome. But yeah, okay. All right, anything else, council? Edmund? Nope. And we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Wilson. I shall call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. All righty. Now, this is one of our shorter council meetings. That brings us into notices of motion. Anything, council? Seeing none, comes into my mayor's report. I will try and keep it as brief as I can, but there's a large list of things to talk about. I didn't realize how busy the last 10 days were until I started writing up this list. So last Friday, not this past Friday, but the Friday prior, myself and CAO Heineman met with Chestermere's CAO and mayor, and I don't think I covered this in the last meeting, but we showed them around our rec center a little bit, but it also initiated a conversation between our rec center and their administration because they want to build something just like what we have. And I think the real takeaway there for me is how fortunate we are that the investments were made in those facilities in the past, because Rocky View is now, or not Rocky View, sorry, Chestermere is now big time playing catch up, and we're very fortunate that we're so far ahead of other communities in the area on our recreation. And I say that in all humility because the reality is I was a very critical voice of the last rec center investment. And sometimes you look back on things you thought were a terrible idea and realize maybe they weren't quite as bad as you thought. So, and Councillor McFadden was there, she was in favor of it, so kudos. We also, on a much lighter note, we all decorated some owl cookies together. You can see the photos on social media should you care to see them. Thank you, Councillor Singh, for organizing all of that, and thank you for everybody who took the time to participate. And I also wanted to mention on our AB Muni's motions, Penhold has already agreed to be the seconder at their council meeting, agreed to be the seconder for our OSL motion. They were very quick and very enthusiastic to do so. We also met with the Innisfail mayor and CAO to discuss them becoming the seconder on our perpetual caveat motion, and they were very open to it, and their council is going to talk about it and then get back to us. And we had the developers liaison group meeting. Councillor Singh, thanks for joining very briefly at the beginning. I already touched on the missing middle conversation that happened, but one other thing to flag, some of the developers mentioned that we may have, and this is a material thing to mention, that we may have overestimated how much growth we have already planned in Cochrane at that 20-year level. And I'm going to continue working with administration to iron out those details and figure out just how accurate the projections of our growth development study are, because obviously, if we're trying to take a very smart approach to managing growth, the foundation of that is really understanding the accuracy of our development summary and our projected growth and approved areas. I also had great coffees with Councillors Wilson and McDonald recently. I think I saw Councillor Singh as well as you two as well at the trade show, but great conversations. Just want to highlight, I appreciate you guys taking the time to have those long conversations about all the things going on in Cochrane, because there's so much to discuss. We'll keep on having those. Drew and I also did a tour of the Ball Diamonds with Minor Ball and saw some areas for improvement there. Thank you to our CAO for venturing down there with me, and thank you to Minor Ball for organizing the tour with us. Of course, we had the trade show. There were lots of positive remarks, some tough questions. For me, I thought the biggest themes that I heard is the same growth stuff we've all been hearing, the stuff I've been talking about. There really was, I think, also a very interested voice in people who want to see more businesses, more commercial and industrial areas, and it didn't really feel like just like some sort of political talking point. It felt like a very real conversation that people feel like there needs to be more access to areas to buy stuff and open up businesses here in our community. And then, of course, we had the big fire in Heartland. Very serious and terrible event for a number of families in our community. I do want to give a very explicit thanks to our first responders who got out there and dealt with it in short order. And I was on Global News speaking about that. They liked to point out when I spoke to Global News that it seemed like a smart idea. We purchased something else for a fire hall already, and so there was that. And then just to finish on a positive note, perhaps the biggest news over the last week was the announcement from the Alberta government, the $29.4 million, I think, investment into the Hawthorne Continued Care Facility. That's going to directly address some of the stuff we heard about in our housing needs assessment here this evening. Okay, that's my report. Can I get a motion to accept the mayor's report? Councillor McFadden?
I will move to accept the mayor's report.
Okay, any questions, conversation about it? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And then, do you have a council report?
I do have a council report. So I know, first of all, kudos to my council colleagues. Every year this job gets busier and busier. So I know you've been busy, but I just wanted to just kudos even this week. We've been very busy with the strategic planning sessions. We've been busy making sure we're having like authentic conversations with each other, and then representing and working together at the trade show, which is always valuable to get that one-on-one with the community and be accessible. And then the fun events like decorating cookies. And I know Councillor Singh will lean into that a little bit more, but thank you for arranging it. So yeah, always busy times as a Cochrane Town Councillor. I am fortunate enough to be Council's liaison to the SOS Centre Board of Directors, and some other positive news to share from that group. They held their AGM on Thursday night, and as part of that, the independent auditor report was accepted with a clean, unqualified opinion, and reported it was a very smooth audit process with no significant issues. And congratulated the staff on being so collaborative. So they received their audit, it's in good shape. The board also welcomed 4 new members to the board through a public recruitment process. So that happened on Thursday night. Very impressed with all of the candidates that applied, and very impressed by the 4 new directors on that group. So I'm going to be excited to continue working in that space. And then importantly, in the report there, board leadership really highlighted that the reset in the relationship with the town is being really positively received there. And they're really appreciating the greater transparency, trust, and authentic engagement, and made a deliberate point to appreciate how much they enjoy being able to engage with Michelle, Andrew, and of course yours truly, but Michelle does a lot of lifting for us. And so from my perspective, it's really encouraging to see some great progress, moving ahead with stronger alignment between the SLS and the municipal owners when talking about municipal budgeting and the strategic planning sessions, their strategic planning, making sure it's coming into greater alignment with what Cochrane and Rocky View County are doing. So overall, it's been really positive times working with that board, and I think we're seeing a lot of collaborative work coming together. So I wanted to provide that update to you folks. Thank you.
Councillor Gill.
Okay, I'll try to be quick with mine. As has been mentioned, I was happy to take part in decorating Tim Hortons Smile Cookies alongside my colleagues, with all proceeds from the campaign supporting the Cochrane Food Bank. It was a fun afternoon for a great cause. The town also had a booth at the Cochrane Trade Show where residents had the opportunity to ask questions, share feedback, and learn more about town projects, services, and priorities. Thank you to everyone who stopped by to ask their thoughtful questions or just chat. On the committee side, the Parks and Recreation Committee had a virtual meeting with the team working on the Parks, Culture, and Active Living Master Plan. This plan will help guide future decision-making around recreation, parks, culture, facilities, and active living opportunities in Cochrane. I look forward to seeing this work continue as we plan for both current needs and future growth. On the Natural Environment Protection Task Force side, they've also been hard at work. Committee members continue to move forward with the work plan, and both the Speaker Series and Volunteer Ambassador Program are well underway, with more to come soon. It's been encouraging and exciting to see the level of commitment and enthusiasm from those involved as the team continues working towards stronger environmental stewardship in Cochrane. And lastly, I'm always grateful to residents who continue to reach out, ask questions, and stay engaged. Thank you.
Councillor Singh.
I'll keep it short. I'd like to recognize and thank you many volunteers who participated in annual Alberta Highway Cleanup on May 2nd. And I had the privilege to join FCACA, Cochrane Filipino Community Association, with the Highway Cleanup. And also thank you, Mayor and Council, for joining for the decorating the Smile Cookie. And thank you to our administration team, our CEO and Council for the great trade show we have. Lots of residents came and talked to us, and which was very fulfilling. And lastly, I want to say, as we approach Sunday, May 10th, Mother's Day, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation and gratitude to all the mothers in our community and around the world. On a personal note, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to my mother in India and my Canadian mom. Happy Mother's Day. Thank you for being such a strong role model and pillar of support in my life. Thank you.
Okay. Can I get a motion to accept the council reports?
I make that motion.
Councillor McDonald, conversation, questions, all in favor? Carried. And there are no closed sessions this evening, and so that is